Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started in Chapter 13, which is debit credit law. For the most part, debit credit law is a relatively new chapter. It's been in the last edition of the book. Before that, it wasn't. In fact, I think the first time he ever talked about it was in 2003, and it was a basically lecture only thing. I put together something that is your debit credit A. Those are older questions. I would not do them other than just a few of them. Some of them don't use the same terminology anymore. I would avoid the debit credit A until I revamp them. But anyway, it's been a while. He went about 6 years after he did it in 2003. Didn't have it at all again. Did it one summer session. And then it started to come into, I think in 2012 or 13, it came into the new edition of the book. Now, your edition of the book has been updated. It's a better font, better layout. Some typos have been corrected, but for the most part, Chapter 13 is relatively new compared to all other chapters. And thus, it doesn't have near as many questions that I'm aware of or something like that. However, we're going to go over the major things associated to debit credit law. And there's one thing that you need to note is I'm going to shorten this video by a little bit, because normally there's going to be certain things that have like 15 different disclosures or something like that. And I'm not going to read them to you. You can read them, but when I say A through K or something like that, it's important. It has been on previous tests. I'm just not going to regurgitate it to you. You can read it over. I will tell you the pages and the disclosures and the lists and stuff like that. Now, in your purple packet, you're going to have 2 pages for Chapter 13 that are going to be quite a bit important. And then that is the page with a 3-column chart. I don't know if you can see this. A 3-column chart with different types of things, exemptions and stuff like that. And then on the next page, on the back page of that, is a list of all the acts and their basic what they do. Now, the 2 pages before that in the packet are those various acts, more in an outline form. This is a chart form that you might want to know. And the other thing you want to know, and I haven't added it to it, but you might want to put the acronyms of these charts, because acronyms are going to be big for Chapter 13 as well as Chapter 14. Okay? So these two pages that we talked about in the purple packet are going to be important as well. Debit credit A, I would not do. Unless you just have a bunch of free time on your hand. I would do debit credit B and C definitely. And I would do the questions in the back of the study guide. Those would be the much more important than A. In fact, I'm probably going to eliminate A and take out the best 10 or 15 questions and redo A. Anyway, okay, let's go ahead and get started. We're on page 325 of your study guide. When I go through this stuff, like I said, when we get to the various acts, there's going to be disclosures that you need to know. And I'm just going to tell you, you need to know disclosures 1 through 6 in this various act. I'm not going to read them over to you, but it is important. It's very important for you to look those over, because that can be some of the questions on the exam itself. And that's what that little outline is. It's a little bit more on the disclosures aspect, whereas the chart with all the acts is basically a basic general idea of what each act does. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on page 325 of the study guide. I think everybody knows what a debtor and a creditor are. The person that extends the credit is a creditor. The person who owes the debt is a debtor. So if you buy something on your credit card or something like that, you're the debtor and the credit card company is a creditor. However you want to do it, that could be with a loan, that could be, a credit card statement, anything like that could fall into it. A secured creditor is someone who owns a security interest. That means a specific property by the debtor is given to them. So if you have a house and you're making mortgage payments on, or you're making car payments on a car, until you pay it off, you don't get the technical deed to the house, or you don't get the technical car title until it's paid off, because they're going to own that car title, and that is going to be their secured interest. Okay? That way the debtor can still hold and use the property as he writes under collateral, but still until that debt's paid, the creditor has some kind of ability to get money. They can hold the property, they can sell the property to apply proceeds associated to it. Okay, on the next page over, we have the different types of liens. Now, in the packet, there is a page just different things with the different types of liens. One of the first pages after all the answer questions and stuff, different types of liens. There's about 2 or 3 questions. You usually get about 25 questions on a normal exam of 50. Since he's gone to 25 questions on the last couple of exams, maybe you only are going to get like 10 or so from chapter 13, maybe even a couple less than that, because honestly, you also are adding in chapter 12 now as well. So now you have 3 chapters instead of where you normally only had 2, and you're having 25 questions instead of normally 50 questions. All right. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. In terms of the artisans, workers, landlord liens, and mechanics liens, there's usually 2 or 3 questions on it, which means you may get 1 or 2 on this exam. For the most part, if it goes to 25 questions. The first one is an artisan's lien. Now, an artisan's lien is someone who provides services or labor to the debtor on the debtor's personal property. We're not talking real property, i.e. anything on your land. We're talking your personal property, i.e. either fixing your shoes, you're dry cleaning your clothes, anything like that. They are going to be in possession of your property, and they are going to keep possession, i.e. the artisan's lien. They're going to be in possession of that property until payment is made. So if you go to the dry cleaner and you get like 8 items dry cleaned, and then when the bill arrives and you come back to pick them up, they say you owe $24 or whatever, $3 an item, and you don't pay, they're not going to give it to you and say, okay, pay me later. They're going to keep those items as a possessory lien. And an artisan's lien is going to be basically they provided services on the dry cleaning or shoe repair or anything like that. They're going to keep that. Another excellent example that you might want to note is, say you buy a wedding dress and you get it altered. If you're getting it altered, then you may have $200–300 worth of alterations, maybe even more. If you don't pay for those alterations, they're going to keep the wedding dress. It's a possessory lien, artisan's lien. Okay? In order to have this lien, you must be in possession. The person that is considered to be the one that is doing the lien has to be in possession of the property, i.e. the dry clean, i.e. the shoe repairman keeps the shoes. The lady that does the alterations on the dresses, she keeps the dress. Now, the next one is called worker's lien. Do not get this confused with a mechanic's lien, which is on the next page over in your study guide. Worker's lien deals with mechanics, garage mechanics. But mechanics lien is something else not dealing with garage mechanics. The worker's lien deals with garage mechanics, and it's a special type of artisan's lien. So if you're given a question, the answer is worker's lien, i.e. something about garage mechanics. It is a special type of artisan's lien as well. So you might have artisan's lien on A, you have worker's lien on C. You might want to put A and C both together. If he just gives you one answer, worker's lien would be better. Okay. Now, a worker's lien is for repossessing the property. So say you have some car repair done and you pay for it by check, and the check turns out to be fraudulent or a hot check, or you don't have enough funds in your account to pay. They have the ability to go and get your car and repossess it until payment is made. Okay? It's a special type of artisan's lien. They've already given your car back, but they now have the ability to repossess it from you and then hold it until payment is actually made. That is an artisan's lien with that little repossession added clause to it. Only available generally for for mechanics, garage mechanics and stuff like that. You also could have storage fees associated to that. I would note that as a multiple choice option as well, and stuff like that. The next one is landlord lien. Landlord lien, there's 2 types. One for farmers, and that's basically they're going to hold a lien on your crops. So if you get crops, they're going to take them from you and or take them so they can pay them off until you pay for your anything you owe. Now, a building lien for a tenant is basically your rent. If you don't pay your rent, the landlord has certain things that they can come after you. And that is a landlord lien. Now, if you owe, say, $1,000 in rent because you couldn't pay your rent because you're now unemployed or something like that, whatever reason, the landlord can come and repossess certain property that you have until payment is made. Now, specifically, what is not allowed to be possessed or taken is exempt is on page 326 of your study guide. On C 3.2b, there's a long list of about 15, 16 things that you have that cannot be taken away, are exempt. I'm going to quickly go through this list and I'm going to say, hey, here's a way to remember this. Wearing apparel, that's clothing. Tools, apparatus, books for trade or profession, school books, family library, family portraits or pictures, one couch, two living room chairs, dining table and chairs, bed, bedding, furniture, food, medicine, automobile, and also one truck. I would note the and, not just or. Agriculture implements, especially for work-related material. Children's toys not commonly used by adults. Goods at least premised, not owned by the renter. So if there's some property at your place that you're renting, but it's not yours, they can't possess that. And then other secured property, something that you already have a security on by someone else. They can't take that as well. Now, let's go through that list and basically crunch it down. Most of those things are what an average person needs to survive in a work and home environment, i.e. a bed, clothes, food, your work-related stuff like tools and apparatuses. Or it has, or you need to be able to get to and from work with the automobile and truck. Or it has no value on the open market. So your family library or family portraits or pictures, while maybe valuable to you, aren't going to generate money on the open market. Therefore, they don't have the option to seize those. The other things are things that you don't have a right to. Someone else has already a credit, secured credit associated to it. Now, the last one that I want to talk about on the test exam is number 13, children's toys not commonly used by adults. An Xbox would be used by adults, okay? So that would be able to be seized. A stereo, a TV would be able to be seized. But a children's toy like a Nerf ball or a scooter or something like that, one of those little toy scooters, wouldn't work, would be mainly used by kids. So they can't take those. Now, landlord, if they want to evict you for finals, remember that's going to fall under justice of the peace court, and so the landlord liens kind of go with that as well. Okay, so note that. All right. The last lien that we have is a mechanics, contractors, or materialmen's liens. The first thing you need to know is those can all be the different names. Do not get confused with a garage mechanic, workers lien that we talked about earlier, and the mechanics, contractors, or materialmen's lien that we're talking about now. Now, when we talk about mechanics, contractors, or materialmen's liens, we're talking about stuff where work is done on your real estate, i.e. a new roof, or plumbing, or electrical work. All of those things aren't basically going to be able to be taken off if they fabricate some specialized material for your land. Those can't be really taken away. They're not going to come in and take out all the wiring. They're not going to take the roof off until you pay, although I guess technically they could, but they're going to go after other things that they can come after, okay? But that would fall under mechanics, contractors, or materialmen's liens. And what they're going to do is they're going to put a lien on your house probably until payment is made. All right. The next question that you have usually one or two questions on, and remember when we're talking about 25 questions now, you're probably cutting it in half unless he puts a 50-question exam together again. You have the three different types of writs. One is a writ of attachment. What is a writ? When we talk about writ of certiorari in the first exam, a writ is a court order. This is a court order to seize property. That a debtor is indebted to the creditor can seize that property if it is going to be disposed of. Now, you can get a writ of attachment, okay, from the court order, when the debtor is one of the following, and it's the 3F on page 327, is about to leave the state, takes the property out of state, holds the property or hides the property to avoid creditors, has already disposed of some of the property, is about to sell the property under false pretenses, or not a resident of Texas. Now, the storyline one that you might get is the non-resident Texas. You could have one where you're a resident of Texas, but you're about to leave the state if you've already taken the property out. Or if you don't live, if you're not a resident of Texas, say you're an out-of-state student, and they can automatically come after it because you're not a resident of Texas. So note that the debtor is EA, about to leave the state, or is not a citizen of the state, hides or takes the property out of state, or disposes of it, or sells some of it under false pretenses. All of those are ways that you can get a court order for a writ of attachment. The purpose of the writ of attachment is basically to allow them not to dispose of that property because you have the ability to use it to get money or get credit, get your money back and or use as a lien or something like that. The next one, the next court order is a writ of garnishment. A writ of garnishment is money. On page 328 of your study guide, it's a court order to seize money from someone else. Most often, this is going to be done at the financial institution. It is very rarely done in Texas at the employer level, i.e. where they garnish your wages. The writ of garnishment is usually where they freeze your account, so to speak, in a bank. Okay? It cannot be used against employers in Texas. Certain other states, absolutely, but not in Texas, unless you have past due child support payments and stuff like that. A writ of attachment has been issued against that debt. Now you can go after a writ of garnishment. That way you can seize the money if you're not being able to seize the property. This writ of garnishment can only be done by the courts, and I would note that. The garnisher is the person trying to take the money. The garnishee is the person that has the money, i.e. in this case, the writ would be the court order against the bank to seize the money or freeze the money out of your account. That would be the garnishment. The last one is writ of execution, also known as writ of judgment. And in your study guide on page 328, it doesn't say writ of judgment, but it says execution of judgment. He does have writ of judgment on the exam, writ of execution being the same thing. And this is a court order to seize non-exempt property, i.e. non-exempt is anything that we're about to go over in the next 2 or 3 pages of the study guide. It doesn't become final until 30 days later on, and it can be extended it's good for 10 years, another 10 years after that. And this is where you can actually seize the property. It's usually going to be done by the sheriff. The constable is going to seize that property. In fact, he has a little storyline scenario. Who is likely going to be the person who's going to seize the property under a writ of garnishment, a writ of execution or writ of judgment, and that is going to be the sheriff or constable when there's a court order to seize the non-exempt property. Now, the question becomes what is and what is not exempt. And on page 328, 329, and basically the very top of page 330 is a list of what is and is not exempt. One, we have our own little table that we're going to make for the real estate or real property. And then you have a chart, basically that 3-column chart I was talking about in the packet. Okay, the first column here is the landlord liens. We've already done that. Okay, let's just put in a little better terms, maybe understand it a little bit better. The second one is what we're about to do on the next 2 pages of the study guide. And there's extensive property, and there's about 5 or 6 things. And then there's general property, of which there's about 10 or 11 things. This is going to be basically page 329. But before we get to that, the next thing we need to do is talk about a chart that we need to make in terms of real estate. Okay? Now the question becomes whether or not you are, and I don't want to say married, that's where the debit credit A is not as good from all the test questions, because it used to say married and not married. It's now family versus single adult. Okay? Now, the first thing we have is real estate. When we're talking about real estate, how much can you exempt? It depends on if you're in an urban area or a rural area. If you're in an urban area, regardless of single or family could be a single mom with 3 or 4 kids or whatever. Regardless of family or single adult, it doesn't matter. The maximum you can exempt is 10 acres plus improvements in an urban setting. Now, these don't have to be next to each other, but you can exempt, and you can choose which ones you do, but you can exempt 10 acres plus improvements, whether you're a single adult or married and or single mom with kids. That would be a family. Okay? Rural is a bit different, because now you're going to have a baseline and then you're going to double it. Okay? In a rural situation, a single adult can exempt 100 acres plus improvements, and it doesn't have to be the exact same thing. It can be different, it can be in more than one parcel. They don't have to be next to each other. But they can choose 100 acres of land as a single adult. Okay? As a single adult. A family, i.e. a single mom with kids, single dad with kids, can get up to 200. So when you go from single to family, you double. And this is also going to apply to the general amount of exemptions a little bit later on as well. Single versus family, you double. So you figure out the baseline and you double it, okay? So here's the thing. Every time you figure out a baseline for these monetary amounts and or acreage or something like that, single, you figure out the baseline, you're going to double family, okay? All right, note that for the test, other than the urban. Urban is 10 acres regardless. Okay. If you look on page 329 of your study guide, you have the personal property exemptions, extensive property that can be exempted, current wages, except for past due child support, alimony, child support payments, health aids, religious Bibles or other sacred books, typed retirement accounts, and college savings plans. You'll hear everybody that puts, people put money into a savings account for their college education, for their kids' college education, and or they put more money into retirement accounts, because this cannot be seized. So say I owe $50,000 and I'm worried about it getting seized. I may put it all into my children's college fund and or put it into certain retirement accounts, and that way it cannot be seized because it's exempt, okay? That is a way to, quote, cheat the system, but it's a legal way to cheat the system. You can always take that money out. There might be penalties, but at least it would be exempt and not be able to be taken by the creditor. All right. Now, the general amount worth of exemptions that you have is, once again, a double situation. The single adult is 50K. Family, you double it. Single adult, single mom with kids, double it, okay, to 100K. It used to be 30-60. And there may be still a couple of questions because I don't think I corrected it. I did correct it on a couple of questions for finals, I think, but I didn't correct it. If there's one in your packets that say 30,000 and 60,000, that used to be the baseline, 30 and then double it. It is now 50 and 100. So if you get a question and there's no 50 or 100 on there, 50,000, 100,000, and there's like a 30 or 60, then just understand I haven't fixed it. I'm going to look those over, and maybe when I do another little quick little video, I'll say which questions need to be corrected. But it's 50 and 100. It used to be 30,000, 60,000. All right. Now there's a question in the back of the study guide that I also need to look at because he made a mistake on it to begin anyway, but that also has to be updated as well. All right. On the rest of page 329 is a list of general property that can be exempted as well. It includes a lot of the things that a landlord couldn't get to as well, because you got to have enough to survive and everything like that. Home furnishings, food, farming and ranching implements, tools for job, wearing or clothing. But then it also adds in a few other things. Things that are added in that a landlord could take, but you can't take or could be exempt under other types of property exemptions, is jewelry, not to exceed 25% of the overall, 2 firearms, athletic sporting equipment, including bicycles. The next one, number 9, is a test question. So you need to memorize, 1 through 8 in general, because those are questions there. But number 9 has its own specific question. Okay, a 2-wheeled, 3-wheeled, or 4-wheeled motor vehicle. Notice that bicycles are in there, number 8. That's 2-wheeled, but it's not a motor vehicle. We're talking about ATVs, motorcycles, cars, trucks, anything like that. A 2-wheeled, 3-wheeled, or 4-wheeled motor vehicle for each member of the family or single adult who owns a driver's license, or who does not own a driver's license but relies on another person to operate the vehicle for benefit of the non-licensed person. So say we have a single mom with 5 kids, and one has a driver's license, and the 3 other kids are all like 8, 6, and 4 and don't have a driver's license. How many cars, trucks, motorcycles, ATVs, whatever it is, could that family exempt based upon that? Well, you've got the single mom with a driver's license, that's 1. You got another person with a driver's license, that's 2. And then you got 3 other kids, now that makes 5, that need some other transportation, and maybe someone else, the neighbor, can drive them in the car. So you could exempt up to 5 trucks, automobiles, motorcycles, whatever, under this situation right here. because you have a license on the single mom, you have a license for their oldest kid, and then you have 3 kids that might need transportation, so you can put that as well. I would note that on number 9, just simply say how many is it, and that should give you the number answer that you can do. For each member of the family or single adult who holds a driver's license or does not own the driver's license but relies. And that could be someone that's elderly, doesn't have a license anymore, but needs some help from someone else as well. But note that it's usually kids. Now, the one trick question on a form is a single mom, another kid that lives there, age 19, without a license. Well, they may not be able to get listed. So note that for the test as well. All right, number 10 is a bunch of little stuff that you need to memorize. Once again, you can also exempt 2 horses, mules, donkeys, saddle, blanket, and bridle for each one, up to 12 head of cattle, 60 head of any other type of livestock, 120 chicken fowl, and I would note the chicken fowl, and then also your household pets would fall under there as well. So they can't take away your household pets. So the things from those last 2 pages or these previous 2 pages is column 2 in that 3-column chart, memorize it. And then remember, urban is 10 acres plus improvements regardless. Rural is 100 for single adult, 200 for family, i.e. single adult with kids or something like that. And it doesn't have to be, includes all improvements on it, includes more than one parcel of land, it doesn't have to be next to each other and all that stuff as well. Single adult, 50K in exemptions, family, 100K in exemptions. Single mom with 5 kids would be family, that'd be 100K worth of property can be exempted, okay? And remember, they also will typically hide the money in retirement accounts and stuff like that as well. All right. The next thing we have is on page 330 of your study guide is on that front page. Again, the rest of it's on the front page, and that is the difference between a surety, cosigner, and guarantor, and then the bankruptcy chart towards the bottom. All right, let's talk about the guarantor, the surety, and the cosigner. In a cosigner situation and or a surety situation, the person that takes on the debt, the debtor, is primarily liable, okay? In a guarantor situation, they are secondarily liable for that person's debt. So if your mom or dad co-signed your apartment, and then you didn't pay the rent for a month or 2 months or whatever, they could not even start going after you for the rent. They could go directly after your mom or dad because they were a co-signer. They don't have to worry about you. They can go directly after the co-signer. If they were a surety, which is, just another way, they could directly go after them. So if your mom or dad acts as a co-signer or a surety and you don't pay your debts, they may say, screw it, I'm not going after some young kid. I'm going to go after the parents who have the money. And they're going to totally ignore you, and they can justifiably do it because your parents are acting in a primarily liable situation. Now, if your parents act as a guarantor, then the person who is the creditor must come after you, and after they've exhausted all remedies with you, now they can go after your mom or dad for the debt. The guarantor is secondarily liable. If they can't get it out of you after numerous attempts, then they can come after them. Whereas in a cosigner or surety situation, primarily liable, they don't even have to come after you. They can just say, screw you, and go directly after your cosigner, your surety, i.e. your parents in that situation. So note that. In a storyline situation, he says, which of the following situations would your mom or dad not have to pay your debts immediately, but only if you failed to, after numerous attempts, to make good on your debt? They would consider that to be secondarily liable. You'd be looking for guarantor as your answer. If they can go after them directly, then you're looking for cosigner or surety, and it could be on either one of those ones as well. Okay? And then you have the surety, guarantor, and cosigner. The definitions of those are in the packet. You can read over those. Bankruptcy, Chapter 7 is just basically liquidation. Usually the property is seized by the judge, and then they're going to sell it off to pay off the creditors for any money. Chapter 11 is usually good for businesses. They're working out a plan in order to get out of debt. So if they have $5 million, they file bankruptcy, Chapter 11. They're still trying to work throughout their business. They're still trying to do the business, but they're trying to reorganize and figure a way to pay off their debt. Example, General Motors and Chrysler and stuff like that. In Chapter 7, if you go Chapter 7 bankruptcy, say you're a business, the business is basically done, kaput. In a Chapter 11, you're filing bankruptcy and you're getting bankruptcy protection as well, but you're trying to do it in a reorganization manner to continue the business. In Chapter 13 is more for personal bankruptcy. Wage owners with a fixed income, and you're working out of debt. Say, for instance, you're an elderly person, you've retired, you get monthly Social Security payments and Medicaid payments and all that stuff. All your retirement and stuff like that comes out to about $1,200 a month. By the time you pay all your bills and stuff like that, you owe money, so you put a bunch on the credit card. Well, now you're under a fixed income, and you're not going to be working anymore and stuff like that. So you've got to figure out a way to pay off your debt with that $1,200. So what in a Chapter 13 situation is probably going to be is what the courts are going to do are going to say, okay, we're going to take of that $1,200, we're going to give you your rent, we're going to give you your utilities, and then and some food money. The rest of it, say $300, $200, is going to be put into an account, and we're going to pay off all the creditors that you have in a portion out. Now, they may only get pennies on the dollars, or it may take years for them to finally get paid, but that is going to be a bankruptcy filing, Chapter 13. I would note, although I think this is not one that's going to be a big one if he only goes to 25 questions, I would note the difference between those three chapters, Chapter 7, 11, and 13. If there's like 25 questions on the exam, I would say you have a much more likelihood of that being on the exam. All right, the next part of Chapter 13 is the different acts. And you have this chart in the packet on that back of that 3-column chart. You have a list of all the acts. I would put, and I'm going to do this in the future, I've already written notes over this virus situation on things that I'm wanting to fix up packets and stuff like that. I'm going to put the acronyms, because the acronyms, you need to put the acronyms on all these acts. It's fairly self-explanatory. And then the administrative agency that's in charge of it, I think I'm going to get rid of the administrative agency or just add a column in the future, but we need to know the acronyms more than anything, okay? I'm going to take a quick break, give you a break, and then we're going to do these basically 8 or 9 acts. Now, some of the material that I'm going to talk about in these 8 or 9 acts, I'm just going to say you need to memorize on page 2, 336, you need to memorize these 7 disclosures. I'm not going to read over those disclosures. You can read them over on yourself, and I'm going to go back over and we're going to make sure all those disclosures that have been on previous exams, that you have a listing of the ones to memorize, because that is the one that gets people the most of these various acts. The chart is great for understanding the general idea behind each act that you're going to do. It gives you a great chance to do educated guesses, but it doesn't give you a great chance on educated guesses on disclosures, listing of what is and what is not disclosed. All right, take a break. We'll start the next video up.